when we were designing the ecosystem and the chain that we wanted to build, one of the big things was kind of trying to solve for fragmentation. There is like an argument around like, oh, it's better to have multiple DEXs either for competition's sake or to de-risk having like a key man risk or having one protocol. We're very confident with the protocols we chose. They've been battle tested over many years without any security audit or without any security vulnerabilities or any hacks or any bugs.
Critics argue like it reduces innovation and creates single point of failure. So in the long term, how would you address those kind of concerns from the critics?
Yeah, so this is a very relevant and interesting topic in my opinion. I would say...
Hello everyone, I'm Prashant Jhai, a reporter at CCN, and I'm joined by Mr. Matthew Fisher, who leads institutional and protocol business development at Katana, and he has been a DeFi specialist at Polygon as well. So we will be discussing today about the DeFi ecosystem, how more number of decentralized exchanges or DEXs might not necessarily be a good thing for the DeFi ecosystem. So starting off, hello Matthew, how you are doing?
Doing well. Yeah, exciting times.
So as I mentioned about the topic today, can you elaborate on how multiple DEXs on a single chain contributes to liquidity fragmentation, and what specific examples from current DeFi ecosystem you can illustrate to give us an idea about the issue?
Yeah, so when we were designing the ecosystem and the chain that we wanted to build, one of the big things was kind of trying to solve for fragmentation. Fragmentation occurs at the chain level about protocols that do the same thing. So spot AMMs are big for this too. Fragmentation also happens across chains, and it also happens across assets that serve for the same utility. In terms of liquidity on DEXs itself, having liquidity branched out, or I guess spread across multiple DEXs, hurts slippage in execution for traders and users. The other thing having multiple AMMs basically has for different chains is just like the spreading of incentives that make it either less meaningful or it results in LPs basically jumping from AMM to AMM to try to find that edge and like the best risk adjusted yield. And we can kind of get into the sustainability of choosing one DEX, but that is a good place to start.
Right. So in your view, what are the main drawbacks of the DEX war ongoing right now? Like as you mentioned, protocols compete for liquidity scraps. How does that impact users' trading experience?
Right. So I mean, I think it's just to put it very simply, it's if I swap $100, would I rather get $99 back for this other asset, or would I rather get $95 back? And so I think in the same way that there's transaction fees and there's gas costs when Ethereum is congested, or there's chains that are cheaper than others, the same is true on DEXs. You want to have the deepest liquidity and the most concentrated liquidity for the assets that you're interested in acquiring.
So at Katana, what would you say you are doing to work towards that goal?
Yeah, so with Katana, we basically are concentrating all the liquidity and the yield and the incentives on like one DEX. And what this allows for is, some people to kind of, it allows for a meaningful amount of incentives. Whereas if you kind of spread it across 4 different DEXs, that's not the case. I think, and during the last cycle, people wanted to have kind of a lot of as many protocols as possible. And I think we're just benefit to learn from the people that kind of came before us. And it's really hard to kind of change your strategy once your chain's been live for a few years and you have a builder ecosystem that built their protocols natively on that chain. For us, we were very opinionated from the beginning, and on day one, we made it very clear. After we knew who we were working with, we basically said, like, don't come to other AMMs. We don't really want you, to be honest, because all you're going to do is kind of fragment this liquidity, fragment these incentives. In terms of what we're doing and the innovations we're bringing, we kind of looked at the field. Uniswap obviously is like the clear market leader. The only kind of AMM that had beaten Uniswap past that was Aerodrome on base. And we'd argue it's not just necessarily the execution; it's actually more the VE33 model that they introduced on base and that they built on kind of on top of. And so one thing that Sushi's doing on Katana is they're introducing the E33 model for us. And so what that basically means is it allows us to provide more utility for the CAT governance token. And we actually don't really see CAT as a governance token. We see it as an index of all the fees generated on the chain. You can lock up CAT, you can stake it, and you can vote in direct emissions on the AMM to allow for a more sustainable set of incentives over time and to increase the partners that are bought into the system and generating this flywheel.
Right. So when we talk about concentrating activity into a single execution layer for DEX and lending market, how do you think it would improve in price discovery or market depth compared to the current fragmented models?
Yeah, so the same kind of holds true on the money market side. If you have Aave, Euler, Morpho, Fluid all on the same chain, it is also fragmenting liquidity. What that kind of means for borrowers is if they come in and out with more size, it's a lot more volatile of a borrowing rate. So by concentrating everything into one money market, you're allowing for more stable borrowing rates. And now there's like one stop shop for people to go. They don't have to kind of look at where should we go this, optimizing the yields. You kind of have, what you're kind of getting. That actually is very related to the AMM. So I think maybe people don't understand it as much in crypto, but the AMM and the money market on the chain are very, very tightly correlated in terms of how usable that they are and how like large they can grow. So typically money market and supply caps on Morpho or Aave and these other ones rely on the DEX liquidity of that the local DEX liquidity on that chain, assuming that liquidations happen on that chain. So the curators on Morpho, the vault curators that basically set the supply caps and how big the market can grow, they always kind of analyze and figure out what the liquidity is on that DEX so that they can swap out and perform liquidations. And if they can't, they have to basically lower caps. So I think by concentrating the liquidity on one DEX and on one money market and having these different sustainable yield sources, that's kind of how we think that the best design is.
So when we talk about funneling incentives and fees towards a, let's say, core DEX, what potential challenges might arise in implementing them? Like it's a kind of a centralized approach, like chains focus towards the core DEX. So within a decentralized ecosystem, how do you think taking that centralized approach would pan out?
Again, like we haven't hid from the fact that we are opinionated and we're making big bets. So there is like an argument around like, oh, it's better to have multiple DEXs, either for competition's sake or to de-risk having like a key man risk or having one protocol. We're very confident with the protocols we chose. They've been battle tested over many years without any security audit or without any security vulnerabilities or any hacks or any bugs. But again, like there are like trade-offs to everything. So like there is a risk of like one of these protocols going down. But we vetted them. We did a bunch of internal audits. We talked to the team, and they've been battle tested over like many years. And so that is just like one of the trade-offs. In terms of centralization and competition, we still like want a ton of competition. We just believe that having one core protocol at the base layer is the right design, and the spot in the layer to compete is one layer above it. The distribution, the user experiences, the various things that people can build on top of it to tap into the underlying liquidity. So when we go after fintechs and all these other things, like they are going to be tapping into the underlying liquidity with competing with their own mobile apps, their own looping strategies, their own this and that. But at the base layer, I think it's very impactful and valuable to kind of concentrate the liquidity and incentives there.
Right. So I mean, that model definitely make it more efficient. But let's say critics argue like it reduces innovation and creates single point of failure. So in the long term, how would you address those kind of concerns from the critics?
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, Morpho, for example, their biggest competitor is Aave. They're both on like several chains at minimum. Morpho stops innovating, they're going to lose to Aave regardless. And so it has nothing to do with Katana. They're like pushed it to innovate in other ways. Same with like Sushi and these other AMMs, like they're just like forced to innovate because Just because you have basically are given a lot of the market share on one chain doesn't mean like you're going to attract users to that one chain. Like we've seen how easy it is for users to go between chains. If there's better products and better utility for those products on other chains, if there's newer assets and more exciting assets on other chains, they will just go to the other chain. And if they like it better, they'll just stay there. And so no matter like what happens in crypto, it's just like we're not in the same day as we were before when there's just like Ethereum and like baby Solana. Like there are a bunch of chains out there that are kind of more and more every day. And so if you're not innovating, you're just going to be like doing your chain a disservice, but you're also like you're just not going to be able to compete in general.
Right. So many current chains incentivize multiple DEX through token emissions, grant programs, and other incentives. If a chain were to deliberately pivot to supporting only one core DEX and lending protocol, what steps could you take to minimize the risks around that, so that there's no major capital flight or community backlash?
Yeah, so this is a very relevant and interesting topic in my opinion. I would say we have a ton of respect and are inspired by like the Arbitrum's DeFi ecosystem that they built today. They have definitely strong values within their ecosystem, but like the fact of the matter is they have Uniswap, SushiSwap, Camelot, who's native to Arbitrum, Ramses, who's native to Arbitrum. These are four different DEXs, and there's many more as well. Encouraging all these people to come in, and they've had like these very broad and public grant programs to then turn their back on them later on and basically can make a DEX is not like consistent with what the ecosystem that they try to build, and I think it would really upset a lot of builders. So it's very, very tough, and there's a lot of like this. I mean, regardless of how you feel about decentralization versus centralization theater, there is definitely politics behind the scenes, and I think that would be like pretty tough for them to do retroactively. So yeah, again, I think it's hard to do it if it's not kind of day one. The other thing I would say is if you saw Berachain, they had a ecosystem update earlier this week, I think 3 days ago in a long thread. They basically said going forward, we are going to concentrate on like 3 to 5 applications, work really closely with the teams and all of that. And so this I think, whereas Arbitrum was a lot tougher given like the year that Berachain had and stuff like that, I think part of the function is they're able to I guess pivot easier. And so Berachain is kind of in a way mimicking some of the stuff that we're doing in terms of the concentration and like the focus on like one kind of core protocol and not having like the fragmented attention, but just trying to deliver the best user experience.
Nice. Now moving towards the very famous perp DEXs, right? Perpetual decentralized exchanges, which have been a raise this particular bull season. So I've heard Katana is working on one as well, right? So could you like give us a few insights on that and compare it to like the market leader Hyperliquid at the moment,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
how you do things differently than them or maybe similar to them?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess I can say like perp dexes are the highest revenue generating application on any chain. We don't like have anything public, and so it's not to talk about, but we have some plans coming later this quarter for it.
Right.
We surveyed the field, so we had actually back in the day we were going to partner with Vertex, and we acquired that, or we announced them right before we launched Katana, and then they were also in the process of signing up. So congrats to their team and all of that. But we've kind of like surveyed the field and spent a lot of time on the perp dexes and wanted to make sure that we can get it right and compete with the likes of those things that you mentioned. I think we have interesting ideas for different vaults. I guess one thing I would say. There's ways to kind of build fixed income vaults and all these other things on top of different perp dexes. And yeah, I think one thing Katana has missed so far has been sophisticated traders. And without having a DEX live on Katana, that is definitely something that we realized because there's a lot of knock-on benefits for the rest of the ecosystem. So I would say there's a lot ahead of us.
Right. So I mean, I guess you can only mention just that, nothing more about the project as of now.
Yeah, I don't know who told you. So
I mean, I wish I could mention that, but I'll tell you off record. So now coming back to these multiple DEX problem right now. So do you think having too many DEXs in the ecosystem also lead to like more vulnerabilities. Like we have seen a couple of exploits just recently where DEXs, relatively lesser known DEXs, got exploited for like millions. So do you think more number of players, lesser known players, are more vulnerable to hacks, attacks?
Yeah. So, you could argue that the best move for new chains is to build their own DEX. Uh, and that's how you capture those revenue sources. And it could be original code, and you can put a little bit of an innovative spin on it, and potentially go after different markets and different types of things or different types of efficiencies. The issue is that LPs, like as in liquidity providers and these market makers, um, security and trust is so big for them, especially with DEXs, that it's almost not worth trying to make money at that layer at the chain's perspective. Because in the beginning, DEXs are just so important um, to the whole ecosystem. Like if you don't have DEX liquidity, you don't really have much, right? Um, you literally have like basically nothing. So like uh, I think the most important thing is kind of bootstrapping this liquidity and getting it to be like a usable ecosystem. And with having your own kind of custom DEX, there's just so much like risk behind it, as we've seen with all these exploits over the past few years, that I think people are just not willing to take that risk for like the upside. And yeah, I don't know if this will always be the case, but this is definitely how it is right now. And I can kind of just like pause there. I think the only way to basically do it is if you raise a ton of money and the DEX basically
So start off with a bunch of liquidity then.
bootstraps the liquidity itself. It's battle tested for years. But the thing was, even with a new DEX, is like you can't just test a DEX with a few $100,000 and then tell, hey, we've been testing it. There has to be enough money at stake where these large liquidity providers are like, hey, if there was able to be hacked, someone would have hacked it by now. It's been this long. It's had secured 500 million, et cetera, like that. So I'll just kind of pause there, though.
So, I mean, moving on towards my final questions. I mean, would you like to tell us what you are doing at Katana right now, which would be like beneficial for the ecosystem, which should be kind of different or revolutionary or what we haven't seen much in the past?
Yeah, so Katana is moving into TGE very soon here in the next several weeks. Uh, that will allow us to kind of take the next step. Part of the next step is this kind of VCAT flywheel. If you've seen Aerodrome and some of these other token designs, we're basically taking that to the next step and introducing it at the chain level. So the first implementation of the CAT token utility will be on the AMM, but then we'll also be embedding it into a potential for DEX, into the money markets, and to other places to kind of drive the utility for a token and kind of the obsession of value accrual that our team has around the token. Other than that, we have a few other big announcements that'll kind of come live in the next few weeks. I think they will kind of point to a narrative that is we've been working on for a while, but I'm sure other people have as well, is more in like owning the stack and owning the distribution around it, being as close to the user. So we just we released V1 of the Katana app.katana.network about 3 weeks ago. It's very modular. We built it in a way where we can experiment and add features, even multiple per day. And so we're excited to kind of get that going. We'll build a mobile app this year and all these kind of things as well. The other thing is we want to go and talk to more interesting assets and have a very tight kind of coordination with them. And so basically come to Katana, we can line you up with spot, potentially perps, collateral on Morpho. We have the liquidators, we have the market makers, we have all these curators and different market participants in a very tight and coordinated way to go then sell that as a product. So yeah, I can pause there.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for that insightful talk today, Matthew.